Welcome to another episode of Activists of Today. I am your host, Sarah Sulewski. A little bit about me. I am a recent graduate from the Tennessee State University. I was captain of Tennessee State University's speech and debate team, and I traveled the world as a competitive speaker. I come all the way from Orange County, California, where I'm also a speech and debate coach for the Santa Ana Unified School District. Tonight we welcome our special guest, Yolian Ogbu, to the mic. Here's a little bit about her. Yolian Ogbu is a student organizer based in Dallas, Texas area. Originally from the Bay Area, she is the daughter of Eritrean immigrants and is a first-generation college student at the University of North Texas studying political science. Yolian is finishing up her term as the student body president and has been organizing with This Is 0 Hour since March of 2019, where she serves on the National Operations Team. As a delegate at the UN Youth Climate Summit, Yolian was able to speak on the real roots of the climate crisis, colonialism, capitalism, racism, etc., and organize a climate strike in the North Texas area. During the COVID-19 crisis, Yolian joined the Corona Strike Coalition team to help organize a national strike on May 1st and beyond to demand more from corporations and protections for workers. Inspired by her mom's successful wildcat strike at her nursing home, Yolian co-founded a campaign called #YourWorkersMyFamily, where people across the country and world will be sharing their stories of the conditions of essential workers and how this crisis is affecting families. This campaign is the start of demanding hazard pay and PPE along with fighting for workers' justice. Please welcome to the mic, Yolian Ogbu.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you on the platform tonight. I'm so excited for this interview.
Totally, same.
Yes, so Yolian, tell us a little bit more about your journey into activism and what was that push that really got you started into this work?
Yeah, so I guess I always say that I never really found activism. Activism found me just because I think I hold so many identities that politics is like in this country and in the world have truly affected in my place in society, my family's place in society, that it has become such an important topic in in our household to talk about all the time. And so I grew up, honestly, like having conversations with my parents who are both immigrants and about international politics, about who we're voting for president, for local representatives, things like that, because that was just so important to us and making sure that we make as many great choices as possible, hopefully for our country to do the same to us too.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with the sentiment that you said activism found you. It wasn't like you really found activism, because I feel like as you grow into understanding your identity and your identity in relation to the world that you live in, for a lot of us, it becomes inevitable. Like you have to take action in some way, or you have to educate yourself on what's going on here. Like what can I do to make some of this better, especially if you live in a society that is not very, not understanding, but I guess accepting of either one or more of your identities, or doesn't advocate for those. So I definitely understand what you're saying there.
Totally.
Yes, and so you are a political science major, so I want to know, what do you hope to do with your degree in political science?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of getting ready to start applying for grad school. I'm interested in kind of doing a bit more studying into international law, like international relations. I've just been always passionate about diplomacy, so I think that that's kind of the course that I'm taking with my degree.
I love that. Yes, diplomacy. Okay, and so you've been organizing with This Is 0 Hour since March of 2018. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about this powerful youth-led movement?
Yeah, so 0 Hour is a primarily women of color-led movement based on the premise that, we have to do all that we can to build people power and fight for climate justice. So we do that in a whole host of ways. I mean, one of our tenets in our movement is specifically to advocate for political education. We know that not everyone in the country or the world maybe understands the impact that climate change has on us and our future generations. So we think that we feel like it's our responsibility to help educate those and bring them into the movement. And then on the other hand, we also have been pretty instrumental in planning a lot of climate strikes, especially the global climate strike that happened September of last year that hit, like, I think, monumental numbers.
Yes, and what was it like putting together, like, you helped put together, a strike for that movement? What is it like to kind of put together a strike on that big of a scale, right? You want the visibility. So what are the details that kind of go into that?
Yeah, no, it's wild, to be honest. I think so. I've done a lot of local organizing before, but when I kind of started getting into the national organizing scene, I realized that it was like a lot different than I thought. So a lot of it is based on intrinsic trust in people that you don't know. So, like, I remember having to just be on Zoom call meetings, like, since I think March of that year to plan for a September strike. So I literally had to, like, find in the course of, like, several months people from all across the country and the world and say, like, can you commit to, like, having a strike happen in your area, and, like, what are the things that we can do to help prepare you? And it's a lot of, like, building the tools and resources to disseminate to local regions. And it honestly took a lot of, like, behind the scenes work, more so than I thought, to be honest. So I was more on, like, the operations side, which meant that I had to do a lot of logistical work. So I had to, like, source for people that were actually interested. I had to go find, like, other youth activists in certain areas and kind of bring them on the team. I had to train them on, like, what are some ways to organize a strike? Like, how do you safely organize a protest in your area? I did a lot of webinars and taught folks from all over the world, like, hey, like, these are the steps you need to take for, like, fundraising. These are the things you need to do to reach out to your local representative. This is the type of impact you need to make. Here's how to write a press release, things like that. So making that information as accessible as possible so that anyone, regardless of whether or not you're at college, you're in high school, or, you're a senior citizen, like, you should have the ability and the tools to organize a strike and safely participate in that.
Yes. Oh, I love it. That is a lot of work. I mean, you had to put in a lot of effort in order to pull something like that off. And so, with all of that effort and kind of, sitting back now and reflecting on that, is there any advice that you would give to someone who is trying to put on a movement on a large scale, something similar to what you have experienced?
Yeah, it's all about outreach. I mean, everyone talks about how your network is really what's going to pull you together, and I think that that's so important. I was very in tune with my local area, and I think that's so important, but I also think it's important to start branching out, find people that are passionate about the same things as you, and, like, I think, like you and I, Sarah, I think the way that we've met through social media is the same way that I've met so many other youth activists and have all, worked together towards this common goal. So it's a lot of, like, having faith and, like, finding people, but then also recognizing that there are a lot of organizations doing similar advocacy work. So we need to connect with those organizations. And I think that's what is the biggest thing I learned from 0 Hour was how to build a coalition, right? Because we're all working towards the same goal, but we need to make sure we're on the same page about what direction we're going in.
Absolutely. Big key point right there. Yes. Make sure you guys are on the same page, moving towards the same goal. Love that. And so kind of circling back to climate change, why do you believe it's really important that the youth take action surrounding the issue of climate change?
Yeah, to be honest, like, I only recently got into climate change, like, climate justice work, because I grew up not thinking that it was something for me. So I always thought, well, okay, I feel like the polar ice caps are melting, but yada, yada, yada. Or I see these people that are, like, vegan. I love my vegan friends, love them, but I'm not. And so I saw my friends that were vegan, vegetarian talking about climate change. I was like, oh, I don't really relate. Like, I'm sorry. But then it wasn't until I had a friend of mine who currently goes to Howard, and she's a climate change activist, and she brought me in, and she said, hey, like, this crisis is affecting people that look like us, people that are from the global south, poor folks, people that are from any ends of the margins of society, they are affecting them the most. So why can't you be a part of this? And I realized in that moment that, like, I have just been sitting on my hands. And so I think within the youth community, specifically within younger people, it's a sense of urgency that has really brought younger people into the mix and, like, advocating for this. Because to me, as soon as I saw and made that big picture, like, link in my mind, like, I realized that this is coming a lot sooner than we thought. And as soon as as soon as you find that out, you can't stop. Like, you can't just ignore it, So
Right.
I think that's what a lot of young people, a lot of students are going through right now, is because we have made this link and we have made this conclusion so early on in life that why should we just sit on our hands and not address it?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's really about, the getting that outreach of the and having people have that aha moment, right? Like, you kind of got that moment where you're like, okay, I've been sitting on my hands. And I feel like that's the moment that you want to get. Like, when you're trying to encourage youth, you're like, oh, wow. It's that, the light bulb just went off. And that, I feel like, is what needs to happen to get more youth involved with a movement such as, advocating for climate change. Absolutely.
Totally.
And what are some ways that listeners can join the movement? How can they get involved with 0 Hour?
Yeah, so when you visit our website, this is zerohour.org, you can decide if you want to be an ambassador or if you actually want to start a chapter in your region. We have local chapters at high schools and universities all over the world. And so if you just kind of want to find a way to bring a lot of your peers involved, just kind of create a chapter or a little club and take that time in that space to learn more about the climate crisis. But then you can also be an ambassador. So you can do a lot of volunteering on a nationwide or global scale, where you can help out with webinars, you can help out with, like, making different presentations. And so I think those are the two biggest ways you can get involved.
I love that. So please visit the website if you guys are interested in getting involved. This is 0 Hour. And so, Yolian, as a delegate at the UN Youth Climate Summit, you were able to talk about some of the real roots of the climate crisis that you kind of just alluded to. Could you enlighten our listeners a little bit more on those roots that you were really referring to?
Yeah. So, like I said before, I was very disillusioned to what climate change really does to people. I always thought that it only applied, towards advocating, to not eat meat, or to talk about, like, being recycling, or just these really minuscule parts of climate change, right? And then it wasn't until I read something about how climate change is inextricably linked to all the systems of oppression. I was wondering, why is that? So it all kind of started with when European settlers came to America and decided to, engage in a huge genocide of indigenous peoples. Since that day forward, that and colonialism of African and Caribbean countries, they have completely, utterly changed the landscape of the entire world. And so there have been scientists since then that have proven the changes in temperature that our Earth is currently at because of different things such as colonialism. Now, where racism and the patriarchy come into play is who and what communities are more affected by climate change. If we can take, for example, Hurricane Katrina, we can take, for example, Hurricane Maria, and, like, so many other huge global disasters, and who did that affect more? That affected our low-income communities, that affected our other marginalized communities from racial or ethnic descent, that affected so many people that are already living at the margins of society dealing with system-wide oppression. So it only makes sense that the climate crisis is truly linked to all of these systems. And then, that's truly how we've been able to bring in more Black and brown people into this conversation, because we realize that when this does hit, and if this gets any worse, it'll hit us more than we ever thought. So I was really, really glad I was able to deliver a quick speech at the UN Youth Climate Summit to call to attention the links of the systems of oppression that the climate crisis has, and why they're intertwined, and why the climate change movement, climate justice movement, must center the voices of the frontline communities. And so that includes making sure that it's as intersectional as it can be.
Ooh, I hope y'all were listening because she broke it down. Okay, she broke it down for us today, and I needed people to hear that because it's something that I feel like we scroll past on social media now. Like you'll see stuff on Twitter for it, but that's the breakdown right there. Is that it is when it does hit, it's going to hit certain communities harder. So if you're not advocating for us to have more resources or for us to do better, it's gonna happen, and we're just gonna be like, oh. It's just going to happen like, oh, my goodness. And we've even with the pandemic, we've seen how it has disproportionately hit minority communities, low-income communities, even harder with this current pandemic that we're in now. So I thank you so much for educating us a little bit and enlightening us on those roots that you were previously referring to.
Definitely.
Yes, and so like I kind of just said, we're obviously in the middle of a pretty serious pandemic, and you've recently been involved with the Corona Strike Coalition team. So you helped organize a national strike that just happened on May 1st to demand more from corporations and, get protection for workers. Could you talk a little bit about what occurred on May 1st?
Yeah, so May 1st is historically known as International Workers' Day or May Day because that was kind of the day that a lot of workers around the world decades ago had striked as well. They had fought for their rights as workers and kind of propelled the labor movement. And so we thought that was a very important day for us to, celebrate our workers, but also recognize, the disparities and the issues that we still face and are exacerbated today through the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think it was about a few weeks ago, my mom had organized a wildcat strike, so meaning that kind of out of the blue, she recognized that as a worker or an essential worker, she wasn't really receiving a lot of the benefits that she should, which means hazard pay, which means required PPE and things of that sort. So she decided to organize a strike and had developed a stick out and said, we're not coming into work for 3 days. And that's exactly what her and the rest of her team did. That involved having the regional director then decide to give them extra pay as a result of the strikes. And so I posted that just randomly about a week ago. 2 weeks ago, and it literally caught fire. It reached over 6 million people, and everyone was super, people were inspired by it, that they wanted to, organize strikes of their own because they realized it is possible to fight for what you want. And so when that happened, I actually got in touch with people from the Corona Strike team who are made up of folks that actually were a part of the Occupy Wall Street movement a few years ago. So when they built this team, they brought me on as kind of like a youth liaison type thing, and they were just like, hey, we were inspired by your story. What are some ideas that you have? And I was like, all right, I think that social media is so powerful. So if my mom's story can go, can't everyone else that is an essential worker too? We can replicate this. And so I kind of spearheaded working on a separate campaign to support the efforts and demands of Corona Strike. The demands being, bottom line, need to be providing hazard pay. They need to be obviously giving their workers paid sick leave. I mean, you can't literally be walking around with corona, but, you have to pay the bill, so what are you going to do? Not allowing people to be put in that situation where they have to choose between paying for their bills and food on the table than, their own health, So I think recognizing and valuing essential workers was the premise of this entire movement. And so on May 1st specifically, we had strikes happening all over the world. Thousands of folks just decided to walk out of their work and say, you know what, we've had enough. There was some pretty good results.
That's good. And I want to know, so, since May 1st happened, have we seen some improvement, some efforts from these corporations since the walkout, since these strikes?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing's for sure, we recognize that what we did on May 1st has to continue. It's a constant struggle, right? So we definitely did not expect for it to do as well as it did. After May 1st, Amazon specifically, the CEO, Jeff Bezos, had decided to use $4.5 billion from his shareholders and decided to use that towards providing PPE for his workers and improving testing capabilities in their facilities. That's the first step, but that's something, you know, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's companies like those starting to say, hey, like, we see our workers are upset. And so we've had a lot of ripple effects in that case. I mean, there were even some saying that they're going to now provide, you know, at least a $2 to $3 raise. Not enough, but it's something. And so I think a lot of us on May 1st were just asking for something. And now that we have that something, we're going to spend the next few months asking for more.
That's, I mean, like you said, at least something. We're starting somewhere, you know. I mean, we want to work towards more, getting everything that they should. And so, you know, to make sure that I kind of have that correct, you know, we want hazard pay, and you mentioned PPE. What else are like the ideal responses that workers are looking for from these corporations?
Yeah, that definitely hits the nail on the head. And then also paid sick leave, just so that they have the opportunity to, like, be at home if they're sick and get paid for it. Because if we're still expected to pay rent, you still got to pay your workers then. So I think that that's an important connection to make. We're also advocating for Congress to pass a rent and mortgage cancellation act. So saying that we have to pause or cancel rent or mortgage payments for at least the next few months, because there are people that have reached, at this point, this country has reached Great Depression era type numbers of unemployment, which is really scary. And I think that we need to recognize that we live in this society, and the way we live is because we owe so much money to these people, whether it's our landlords, whether it's our government, and that's even student debt, right? And so we're expanding the conversation past just paying your workers more. We're saying, look, we have debts to pay to the government. We have debts to pay to this country. You should cancel them, considering we are facing a global pandemic. So I think we're starting to make some more connections to even debt, you know.
Good. And thank you so much for creating that conversation and trying to make those connections. I've been having those conversations with just family and just those who I know are struggling. And so I'm really glad that, you know, someone such as yourself and more people are really trying to push that conversation to its highest level to actually get some change implemented. So thank you for that.
Definitely. Oh, of course. Thank you.
Yes, and you alluded already to the campaign that you recently co-founded, and so called #YourWorkersMyFamily. And so this is where people across the country and world are sharing their stories and, you know, as essential workers, and how this is affecting their families. And so I want to know, how has this campaign been going so far for you?
Yeah, it's been incredible. So this campaign came up out of, like, just a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine. And, you know, I'm involved with the Corona strike, but it's not a predominantly, like, youth-led team, and that's totally fine. But then I realized, I was like, we have an entire population of young people that are just sitting at home feeling helpless. Like, I know I'm not alone when I see my parents that are both essential workers, you know, out there risking their lives and working to, you know, sustain living for not only me, but the rest of my family. So I just kind of feel like I'm twiddling my thumbs, sitting at home, not doing anything. And so I was having just ranting with my friend, and then we realized that we need to bring younger voices into this conversation. Like, if we're not going to do anything, why can't we use our time on social media and advocate for our parents, for our uncles, for our aunts, for our cousins, for ourselves too, because some of us are even essential workers, you know. So we decided to build a supplemental campaign off of Corona Strike and said, we support Corona Strike's demands and efforts, but this is a space for us to bring in young people. And coincidentally, it happened, this campaign happened right after Earth Week, and because I'm already super involved in the climate justice movement, I had pitched this to several environmental orgs, and I was like, look, y'all, like, I know I'm not alone when I know that my family are essential workers and they're going through it. And so as much as we're advocating for climate justice right now, we need to be advocating for workers' justice, for our parents, for our family members. So they were totally on board, and we had launched the campaign. We had a whole week of action leading up to May 1st. We had decided we're going to do this in two ways. We're going to have people post stories of, you know, their parents, their family members that are essential workers, but we're also going to do another part of the campaign, and that's tweet bombing. I mean, I know that I've seen it be, like, super successful to just, like, have an entire people, like, tweet at a company talking about their issues that they have. And I said, you know, as much as we can't go out and organize a mass protest, we can do it online. So we had a few days where we told people to just tweet at these companies that are not providing their workers the demands we're asking for. So that's hazard pay, PP, paid sick leave. So much so that they can actually give us a response, and we can go from there. So it actually worked out pretty well. And it was supposed to be supplemental to the strikes happening physically. As a result, we've been able to grow this campaign and reach over 10,000 people in the span of a week. And I think that that's incredible numbers for people that just kind of pulled together a campaign in less than a few days, to be honest. So
yeah, incredible. Yeah, that's a pretty good word for that. She's like 10,000 in like a week. You know, we put it together in a few days. No, that is absolutely incredible. And, you know, I kind of said this to you before the show tonight, but just how it's so inspiring to see someone who has already been involved in organizing and being, you know, a student organizer actually do something during this time. Because like you said, you're not the only one at home who's dealing with these issues. You're definitely not alone here. You're not the only one who has family members who are out there on the front lines. My father works for CVS. My dad, CVS is not closing anytime soon. So, you know, my dad has to be out there every day. And so, you know, you co-founding and just creating this campaign is definitely monumental. So thank you so much for creating a conversation, for creating a space and really trying to connect people, because what we really need as a people right now, without being able to see, you know, without being able to come in contact with anybody else, is to maintain and build connections. And you're doing a great job at that. So huge thank you.
Totally. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. And so, Yolian, I ask all my guests this question. Why do you believe activism in this day and age is so important?
Oh, man. It is key to survival, truly. I think a lot about, you know, people historically and social movements. I think a lot about how I'm directly linked to a lot of freedom fighters from my from where my parents are from in Eritrea, and I saw how much that affected and changed the direction of an entire country, of an entire world. So activism is everything. It's the key to liberation. It's the key to survival. If we didn't have it, I don't even know where we would be right now. So I think that's why activism is so like just, it's inside of me, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it's in my DNA. Like I can't even separate myself and activism. It's so hard to do that. And I feel like I'm where I'm at today because of activism, because my parents decided to fight for what's right, because my parents fled a country and decided to come to this country. And like, I think about so many decisions that marginalized people make every day, and that's in and of itself activism. So yeah, activism is survival, and hopefully, you know, we keep pushing the needle forward and move towards a better world for sure.
Ooh, yes. So she spoke some great words tonight, you guys. I was just listening. I was like, yes, because it is. It's everything that you said. It's the key, and I'm gonna take that, just so you know. I'm definitely gonna run with that. It is the key to survival. It is the key to liberation. I mean, if you took anything from what she just said, I mean, it really is the key. And that's something I really hope that people are able to hear and take away when they listen back to these episodes, and especially to this episode here where we've talked about so many different types of issues that are all kind of intertwined with each other.
Right.
And
totally.
You know, they take that next step to get involved. So thank you so much. And I want to know, how can listeners get in contact with you or get more information about the campaigns you're a part of? You know, where can they find you in these movements?
Yeah, totally. So I am on social media, so feel free and find me on primarily Twitter's like my big like activism hub, to be honest. So definitely feel free to find me. It's my first and last name, and I'd love to connect in any way. I mean, like I said before, I'm all about building coalition with other people, and I think it's so important that we all kind of connect to each other in some way so that we can keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you one more time. I've said it a lot tonight, but it has been a privilege to have you on the show tonight and just to hear about all of your experiences that you've had, the wisdom that you've gained from being a part of these campaigns and these movements. But you truly are an inspiration right now as a student organizer, but just as a person. I have been inspired by just listening to you tonight. So just thank you, and please continue doing what you're doing. You inspire people like me, and I know you are going to inspire many others to really get involved and to stop sitting on our hands. You know, you are going to be one of those people that help us get up. So please continue.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That means a lot. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on and having this incredible platform.
Yes, absolutely. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. We've got to do something.
Totally.
I'm definitely going to be in contact with you.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All righty. Well, I'll speak to you soon, okay?
It sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Activists of Today. I've been your host, Sarah Sulewski. I would like to give a special thanks to my boss, Ashley Little. You all may follow me on Facebook at Sarah Sulewski or on Instagram at Sarah_Sulewski. Thank you.